Hey there, dear strangers online. Before we start this video, I wanted to make it clear that this is not a tutorial or a guide. I don't want to clickbait you and lead you to believe that I developed a breakthrough method to bring back dead saves from the ether, because I haven't. If the internal battery of your old Game Boy cartridges runs out, your save file is gone, there's no way to get it back. This one here is a personal story, nothing more. If you're older than 25 like me, it's very likely that your first ever Pokémon are eternally lost to time. It's impossible to get them back, and my saves are lost too. Except, my Pokémon were not. Life is funny and the weirdest accidents happen all the time. At the end of this video, I will have my first ever Pokémon with me. And don't be mistaken, this is not a reclaim of them or a fun run where I catch the same Pokémon that my 8-year-old self did, no. In this video, I will show how I lost, found, and recovered the actual Pokémon that I had on my earliest Pokémon Yellow and Pokémon Silver playthroughs. This won't work for everyone and wouldn't have been possible if not for a very specific and lucky chain of events. And it started in the 90s. So, games are really expensive in my home country. Piracy has bloomed in a place where having access to games is a huge luxury. Today, if you want to buy a current-gen console working minimum wage, you have to save for 5 full months without spending on anything else, on less important stuff like food or rent. And then, of course, you still need to buy games for your fancy console. You want a AAA game, right? Assassin's Creed or a GTA. That's half of your minimum salary gone. This is why, still to this day, the PlayStation 2 is one of the most played consoles in Brazil because of how accessible it is and how easy it is to mod and pirate games for it. While an original PS2 game would cost you like $50, for example, my dad would take me to a shady street vendor that could sell me any game that I wanted for $2 US. And that's how video games got popular among my generation. The PS2 and piracy are so ingrained in Brazilian gaming culture that to this day, independent teams are still releasing mods for Winning 11-10, the famous Bomba patch, updated with the current soccer teams and players. An insanely popular mod that sells by the thousands still in 2024. For a game from 2007. For a console from the year 2000. I'm telling all that to say, south of the equator, gaming is a luxury. If you grew up in the US, you might remember the years of Pokémania as a time when kids would get together during recess with their Game Boys and trade cards and start rumors and battle together. But for me, it looked a lot different than that. The biggest contact we had with Pokémon was through the anime, shown on public TV. We would watch it during the Saturday family shows with pretty blonde women singing original Pokémon songs for the kids, while the dads could entertain themselves with almost naked women dancing on the screen. The 90s were a wild time for TV in Brazil. The only contact most of us had with any official Pokémon merchandise was when our moms would buy us small soda bottles that would come with a Pokéball and a cheap plastic Pokémon inside. When I was growing up, there were probably 3 kids in my class who actually owned a Game Boy. Link cable? Never seen it in my life. This made it a bit lonely being such a huge Pokémon fan as I was back then. Lucky for me, at least, I was one of those kids because thank God my dad is a huge nerd. When my parents got married, they went to Aruba on their honeymoon, and as good Latinos abroad, they took the opportunity to buy some of the fanciest tech available to them in a tax-free shop on their way back. My dad grabbed an OG Game Boy and a Tetris cartridge. Later, he would grab a Pokémon Yellow cartridge, and my life quite literally changed forever. I can't even tell you what I felt back then because I cannot remember. I have been playing Pokémon as long as I have been forming memories, and this is really wild to me. As I have said in videos before, from the height of my 5 years of age, I was exploring the Kanto region without a single knowledge of English whatsoever. I was going simply and purely based on vibes and what the anime was teaching me. I think the biggest run killers for me were not being able to find the SS ticket, acquire cut, or get flash to get through the rock tunnel. I don't really remember. I just know that as a small kid, I never acquired a 4th badge. Can you imagine figuring out I needed to give water to the guard in Saffron? Impossible! But still, I was having the time of my life. I would get to Vermilion, get stuck, and start over a new save file over and over again. I had my little DVD with the first few episodes of the anime, and I also remembered a videotaped VHS I had with the Casey and Chikorita episode in it. There are a few episodes that stand out over the rest in my memory: Hypno's Nap Time and the Tower of Terror. My little world of Pokemon was made of rewatching the same episodes and always getting the same 2 badges. But it was definitely a bit lonely. Me and the other 2 Game Boy kids I knew, we couldn't play together, we couldn't trade. That was until my dad exchanged an old printer he had for a used Nintendo 64, alongside one of my favorite Pokemon games of all time, Pokémon Stadium. It would let us register our teams individually and then battle against each other, deposit our Pokemon in the boxes and move them over between games. This is also when I traced the origins of my interest in shiny hunting, because Stadium has this feature where if your Pokemon had a nickname, it would show in a different hue on screen. So I would try nicknaming my Pikachu Pi-blue to try and make it blue, or my Charmander Char Green. I would bring my differently colored Ash Ketchum coated yellow team against my cousin's overleveled Blastoise, and it was pure magic. I would throw this Pikachu plush around the bedroom during the 3D battles. The transfer pack did what the link cable couldn't. And that was my little Pokemon world up until 2002 or 2003. That's when I've seen a kid at a birthday party with a new Pokemon game and it blew my mind completely. It was in color, it had all the new Pokemon from the anime, and something that really shocked me back then, and I still remember for some reason, is how impressed I was that the root name would appear on the top of the screen. I knew it was expensive and hard to get, but I wanted it. And my dad got me used Pokemon Silver and Pokémon Stadium 2 cartridges out of eBay. And I still remember the first time I booted them up. At that point, I was a little bit older and I knew how to use the internet finally, which means I could look for walkthroughs. I was going to beat this game. I was going to become the champion for the first time ever. I remember choosing Chikorita on my first go, but for some reason, I changed my mind right after and restarted with a Cyndaquil called Boppy. And off we went into Johto. I played it religiously, and I think to this day, I haven't played any game in my life as much as I did Pokemon Silver as a kid. And there is something magical about Gen 2 that I don't think we are able to capture today anymore. Our lives are too rushed to enjoy Gen 2 as we are supposed to. The right way to play this game is to play it one day after the other. To actually wait for the real-time events to happen, to wait for time to pass on your clock, to wait for night to arrive, to wait until Sunday to go look for Lapras, to wait for the bug catching contest to begin. It's the anti-speedrunning game. It's contemplative and it's meant to be played slowly. And then, when it's nighttime for the first time ever in the Pokemon world, and the lights light up, and the song hits you, there's nothing like it. Of course, nostalgia talking, but I think the most of the issues Gen 2 has when looking with modern eyes, such as the story or the level curve, kind of only appear when you are dashing through Johto. And that's not how I played it. Boppy and I, we spent hours through the night trying to make our way through the Whirl Islands. If you look at a map online, you can see that it's actually not that complicated, but it took me so incredibly long to find Cianwood to get the medicine that, when I did, it felt like the end of an incredible adventure. And that's the spot that Gen 2 has in my heart. It was the first Elite Four I beat, I caught Lugia, and I caught Ho-Oh. At this point, I was really good at looking at stuff online, so I glitched infinite rare candies to get Ho-Oh to level 100. Boppy and I beat Red. That was the end of our journey, but for me and Pokemon as a whole, it was really just the beginning. There was much more online for me to explore, and I joined discussion forums and RPG forums and connected to so many people that loved this series as much as I did. I didn't have a lot of Pokemon friends in real life, but online there was the world. And as time went on, I left Boppy and Pokemon Silver to the side, forgotten a little bit, as Gen 3 was rolling on. And I couldn't even bring them with me because yes, there was no way to transfer Mons from Gen 2 to Gen 3. But also, I never really owned a Gen 3 game back in the day. Games were expensive and a Game Boy Advance was definitely not possible in our budget. I experienced Hoenn entirely through emulation. When Gen 4 came along, after a lot of pleading and negotiating and begging, my father and uncle got their cash together to get me a Nintendo DS. I explored Johto again in Soul Silver, but it was not the same, I felt. It was an amazing game and I put hundreds of hours into it, but somehow, I still wanted to come back to my original Game Boy. I pressed start and the game wouldn't load. And again, and again. I would blow the cartridge, I would scrap the bottom, nothing. The Game Freak logo wasn't loading properly, the game was bricked. I couldn't believe it. It broke my heart. I still don't know what happened, really. If you have any idea, leave me a comment below, but it was just this. The logo with a black rectangle at the bottom. And I remember this happening around the Generation 4 era, and being 12 or 13 meant that I really didn't even have the resources to develop a concept of a plan to fix it. I tried to recreate the team from memory in Soul Silver and move it to the next generations, but deep down, I was really sad. I would keep coming back to this cartridge over the years, scavenging through forums, trying to identify what the problem was to no luck. My OG Game Boy and my Game Boy Color couldn't load it. It was as good as lost. In Gen 5, I got away from Pokemon a little bit. Teenagers, right? But my hiatus didn't take long, because with X and Y, I jumped right back into my Pokemania. I was shiny hunting, I was transferring my old Pokemon to my new games, with the exception of my really old Pokemon, still waiting for me to fix the cartridge somehow. That's when I learned that specifically in Gen 2, once the internal battery dies after 10 years or so, your save is deleted forever. So not only were my Pokemon locked away, there was a timer, a limit when they would be deleted forever. But at this point, I really couldn't. Even if I couldn't transfer them, so I let go, but never entirely. A lot of time has passed since then, but that silver cartridge has always been in the back of my mind, year after year. I moved away from my parents' house, I moved away from the country. At this point, there was no chance in hell that that battery still worked, so why even bother? That all changed one day, when a work colleague turned to me and said, "Hey, since you like Nintendo stuff, do you know what this is?" And showed me his analog pocket. He told me that this device is amazing. It doesn't emulate, it reads the actual original Game Boy cartridges and plays them on a more modern system and a better screen. It's incredible. He also told me that you don't even have to worry about those old games with dying batteries because it uses save states and automatically creates backups in the SD card. And then I stopped still. This was it. This little device had given me an idea, a glimpse of hope. I went out to buy it from a freaking scalper because it was basically impossible to get it normally until a few months ago, and it's an incredible device for retro gaming, and it did exactly what my friend said. And I thought again about this silver cartridge that was still in the back of my mind. Hell, I'm 27 now, I have read it. I can fix that cartridge. And I haven't turned it on in over 20 years, maybe, just maybe, there is a chance that my save is still there. If I could boot it just once in the analog pocket, I could back up and get back my childhood Pokemon Silver playthrough. I had to try. The cartridge, of course, was in another country. But last winter, I went home and I grabbed my stuff. I picked my old yellow cartridge, which didn't interest me so much because the save I had here was probably from 2016, when I replayed it. But I had to try it with silver, it was my last hope. There was only one problem. I couldn't find it anywhere. That's the problem with leaving home. Your parents just take your stuff and put it somewhere and forget what it was and turn your bedroom into a knitting room. I went through boxes, cellars, garages, and I couldn't believe it. It was gone. I couldn't find it anywhere. disappeared. This one, replacement copy. It's not the original. My Wii was there, my N64 was there, but both my Game Boys, my old DS, my Pokémon Blue, and my Pokémon Silver cartridges disappeared. And I was devastated, like, why does this have to be so hard? This really sucks, and it's one of my major complaints I have with Game Freak to this day. These are Pokemon that I have been transferring from cartridge to cartridge since 2006. The data here is really precious to me. It tells stories of times and people that are very dear. And we are not allowed to back it up. The Pokemon games on the Switch are one of the few without cloud backup for saves. When I was living in Brazil, I would never bring my Switch anywhere because if it got stolen, my data would be gone, my Pokemon couldn't be retrieved. To this day, if I travel, I put all of my most cherished Pokemon in home before I do. I couldn't fathom losing my Torterra from 2006. All I ever wanted was to back up my Pokemon somewhere. Then, if something happened to your cartridge or your game, you could still get them back. A backup, just a little backup, would be enough to get Boppy and my other Pokemon back, from a broken cartridge or a dead save. And you know what's crazy? Unknowingly, my 8-year-old self did exactly that. A backup. Earlier this year, Analog announced the Analog 3D, which runs Nintendo 64 cartridges in 4K. Neat, I thought, before getting hit by a Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment. The Nintendo 64! If I had now access to saves from my Game Boy cartridges, then I could do the same with my Pokémon Stadium save files. And what is saved there? Dozens of registered teams from my first playthroughs of Yellow and Silver. The battle with my friends because we didn't have the link cable. The teams, they are all backed up there. So, last week, I met my parents on a family trip and they brought me my Stadium cartridges. I bought a little device that could dump the cartridge data into my computer and send it to some friends to see if it would work, because I was traveling. Both of them told me that they couldn't open the save, and I was like, oh come on! Seriously! They told me the data from the cartridge might be corrupted, and I was like, there is no way. What are the lengths that I will have to go to get my Typhlosion? And then I arrived home yesterday really tired from the flight, but the first thing I did was boot up my computer and try to read the Stadium save data myself. And it worked. Hi, I look like shit. I just arrived from a 12-hour trip and I plugged in my childhood Pokemon Stadium file, and when reading directly from the cartridge, I just accessed my childhood Pokemon right there. They have very funny nicknames, and I want to look at them with you. When I opened the save, it took me a while to find the Pokemon because there were a lot of rental teams registered as well. So this is my reaction when I saw Boppy again for the first time. These are very funny. It's not what I was expecting to find at all. I think these are rental Pokemon. These are not my Pokemon. Okay, this is looking more like it. Yes! Okay, this is from a friend. If these are JP's Pokemon, it means that my Pokemon are right here. I got them. Look at this. Like, legendaries and babies. So, dear stranger online, I would like to take you on a tour of my original Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Silver teams, as they were when I registered them to Pokemon Stadium. Of course, some Pokemon I had but never registered like Sudowoodo or Heracross are not recoverable. A lot of them are gone. But what I found in the save surprised me so much. Mainly when I looked at the Pokemon stored in the box in Stadium, which I had no idea were there. There's a Leafsaur, the Ivysaur, and Surfer, the Wartortle, both originally from Pokemon Blue, I believe. More than that, a Hitmonchan and an Aerodactyl. I really don't remember getting past Erica as a kid, but I guess I'm wrong. These Pokemon are proof that I reached at least Cinnabar Island, which will force me to re-examine forever the Pokemon stories I tell myself. Going for my Yellow registered teams, I recovered Pi-blue, which is now probably the oldest Pokemon I own. If I would have to guess, I would say Pi-blue is from 2001 or so, and I might be interested in turning him into a ribbon master in the future. Subscribe for more. I also want to bring attention to my Nidoqueen Ni-Purple that I misspelled as Ni-Purple. And I think that is the sweetest 8-year-old thing on this cartridge. I named it like that because I wanted it to be purple on Stadium, I guess, which is, coincidentally, the exact shiny colors of female Nidoran. Speaking of which, I have Draw Color, the Drowsy, because I wanted it to be rainbow colored, I guess. How queer. Voador or Flyer, the Pidgeotto, a Dugtrio, 2 Nidorans, and the starter trio from Pokémon Yellow, with Squirtle being nicknamed Squart. Now, for my silver team. This is so fun. I wanna start with my Ho-Oh, nicknamed Mega Ho-Oh, because yes, I was 8, okay? Holding a charcoal, and with a pretty decent moveset. I also wanna highlight here that, as a kid, I was very against the concept of HM slaves, so my HMs are very well spread throughout my team. My Lugia is called Lugma, and any jokes about that will be muted in the comments, okay? This is a kid. Rocking 3 HMs that are not step because I didn't know it's not a water type, and an Aeroblast with a single PP up used. To me, this is pure art. Noctowl with 2 HMs, black glasses, and not a single dark type move. This beautiful Espeon that I still remember looking at guides on how to evolve. My Hitmontop that I also remember using vitamins to minutiously change the stats and evolve it correctly. The Gift Rhydon and Shuckle are here, the Red Gyarados, the Gift Gligar you get for clearing Pokémon Stadium 2, and last but not least, Boppy, level 69. Beating Red with 3 HMs and Flamethrower, a Rio champion. And now, is never going anywhere again. I'm so happy that today I actually have the tech and knowledge to mess around with these save files and dump my ROMs and export them and save them in a backup. I'm so happy that, just like I have been doing with my Torterra, Torgreen, I can bring them together with me in all future Pokemon games I will ever play. This is a story of random encounters, a story of the joy of finding the little things we thought we would never see again. Like childhood, like seeing an old friend. Because nothing is truly lost. Even if you give up and you believe you have searched it everywhere, the things we hold dear always manage to find us. All you need is patience and a little bit of luck. It's a story that I have been wanting to end for a very long time, way before I even dreamed of having a YouTube channel. This is a project, again, that has been on the back of my mind for years, and I believe it might have taken me this long to finish it, just so I could share it with you, dear stranger online. As I told you before, as a kid, I didn't have a lot of friends to share my love of Pokemon with. It was only when I started going online in forums and fan communities that I found people that had a connection to the series that was as strong as mine. And what a privilege it is to tell this nerdy, cringy, sentimental story to 16,000 strangers online who will, hopefully, appreciate it as much as I do. If you are new here, this is a channel that loves Pokemon, but also talks about important themes such as gender and politics. Talk about a niche, am I right? I'm not a PokeTuber or an essayist or anything really, I guess. I do videos that are really tonally different about things that I want to talk about. If you would like to join me while I sail the deep and treacherous waters of the YouTube algorithm, you are more than welcome to like and subscribe to this beautiful hobby of mine. But the story doesn't end here. I might have found that 8-year-old me reached Cinnabar, but I'm positive she never beat the Elite Four with these Pokemon. Pi-blue, Ni-Purple, and Draw Color have been waiting for 20 years, and yet, they have never won a Pokemon League. Now that I have their files safe and sound in my cloud backup, I can finally bring them to the glory they have waited for so long. I want to do a lot of cool things with this Pokemon, so leave a comment below if you are interested in seeing me bring my childhood team to beat maybe some upgraded mods of Pokemon Yellow, maybe a more challenging Gen 1 ROM because I am a bit older, right? I think that would be super fun, but leave a suggestion of what else you would want to see in the comments of this video. Until then, I really hope I will see you on this channel soon.